Con el auspicio de Plenitud, Ciudad de la Alegría, Serenidad Spa Terapéutico, Permasalud Glamping, Marathon Sports.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another show. Today, we will share with you an interview with Gary Zukav. Those who don't know who he is will learn about him through the interview and also through this intro that I will share with you. And those who already know who he's about, who Gary Zukav is, just bear with me as I give you some information. He was born October 17, 1942 in Texas, and he's an American spiritual teacher and the author of 4 consecutive New York Times bestsellers. But before the books, Gary received in 1959 a scholarship to Harvard and graduated in 1965 with a degree in international relations. That same year, he enlisted and entered the U.S. Army Infantry. He volunteered for the U.S. Army Special Forces and served as a detachment executive officer in Okinawa and Vietnam, participating on top-secret operations in Vietnam as well as in Laos. He returned to the U.S. in 1970 and moved to San Francisco. He recounts this period as an emotionally volatile time of sexual addiction, motorcycles, anger, and drug abuse that continued until 1975, when his roommate, Jack Sarfati, took him to visit the Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory, where Zukav became intrigued by quantum physics. He began writing his first book, The Dancing Woolly Masters, that we will be giving away to a listener today. And it was written with extensive help from Jack Sarfati, his roommate, and other physicists he met through his roommate. In 1987, he moved to Mount Shasta, California, where he lived in a cabin as a self-described secular monk and spent time in the surrounding wilderness. In 1993, he met and married Linda Francis and co-founded the Seed of the Soul Institute. Christopher Lehman Haupt reviewed The Dancing Woolly Masters in the New York Times on March 28, 1979, and he called it a book that manages to explain relativity and a lot more without resorting to a single bit of mathematics. After all, Mr. Zukav writes, the fact is that physics is not mathematics. Physics, in essence, is simple wonder at the way things are and a divine, some call it compulsive, interest in how that is so. Mathematics is the tool of physics. Stripped of mathematics, physics becomes pure enchantment. David Bohm, renowned quantum physicist, wrote a personal endorsement provided to the book's publisher, HarperCollins, and said, recommended highly for those who want to understand the essential significance of modern physics and for those who are concerned with the implications for possible transformation of human consciousness. Gary's next book, The Seed of the Soul, published in 1989, was the number 1 New York Times bestseller for 31 weeks and remained on the list for 3 years. In an interview with Jeffrey Mishlove for a popular public television series, Thinking Aloud, Zukav summarized the concepts presenting in The Seed of the Soul, saying, my objective was not to make the soul legitimate in terms of science. The soul is legitimate, period. It doesn't need validation. At least that was my perception, and so I wrote The Seed of the Soul to share the things that were most important to me. The Dancing Woolly Masters was designed to open the mind, and The Seed of the Soul is a book designed to open the heart. And this is often the sequence that many people encounter as they move into an expanded awareness of who they are and why they are here. Our evolution until very recently has been as five sensory humans evolving through the exploration of physical reality. That is the same thing as the pursuit of external power. Now we have crossed the threshold. We are in new territory, a brand new domain. We are now becoming multisensory. That means we are no longer confined to the five senses. Now, I use these terms because the five senses together form a single sensory system, and the object of that sensory system is physical reality. That's what it is designed to detect. As we become multisensory, we move beyond the limitations of the five senses, and we now are evolving to a different mechanism in the exploration of physical reality. We are evolving through responsible choice of and with the assistance and guidance of non physical guides and teachers. We are spiritual beings. We have always been spiritual beings, and we will always be spiritual beings. The difference is that now we are becoming aware of ourselves as spiritual beings, and that is making all the difference. Gary's third book, Soul Stories from year 2000, provides examples of people creating what he calls authentic power. The principle in the seat of the soul was elaborated in the heart of the soul, emotional way awareness of 2002, the mind of the soul, responsible choice 2003, and self-empowerment journal 2003, a journaling workbook co-authored with Zukav's wife Linda Francis and intended as a companion volume to The Mind of the Soul. Soul to Soul Communications from the Heart from 2007 addresses questions about love, fear, choice, responsibility, and intuition. Then in 2010, he published Spiritual Partnership, The Journey to Authentic Power, which suggests guidelines for individuals engaged in relationships for the purpose of spiritual development. I wonder if it has any relationship to the twin flame stories. How do I read the book? Zukav introduces the concept of the alignment of personality with soul as the creation of authentic power. He asserts that a transformation of humanity is underway from a species that is limited to the perceptions of the five senses, evolves by surviving, and survives by pursuing external power, which he defines as the ability to manipulate and control, into a species that is not limited to the perceptions of the five senses, evolves by growing spiritually, and grows spiritually by creating authentic power. He further asserts that this transformation brings with it the new potential of authentic power, and that the pursuit of external power is henceforth counterproductive to our evolution and produces only violence and destruction, which we see every single day. According to Zukav, creating authentic power is a highly personal endeavor that requires the development of emotional awareness, responsible choice, intuition, and trust in the universe, which he describes as alive, wise, and compassionate. He asserts that each individual can create authentic power only for himself or herself. He defines intention as a quality of consciousness that infuses an action, that is, the reason or motivation for the action and choice of intention as the fundamental creative act that each individual performs continually, whether unconsciously or consciously. Creating authentic power requires consciously choosing intentions that create consequences for which the chooser is willing to assume responsibility, which is that would be responsible choice, which requires emotional awareness and which intuition can assist. Gary Zukav distinguishes the old male, which is a five sensory protector provider, and the old female, which is a five sensory childbearer homemaker, who join in marriage in order to enhance probabilities of survival and comfort for the emerging new male, which is a multi-sensory, intuitive, emotionally aware, and the new female, which is the multi-sensory, capable of all choosing endeavors, who join in a new kind of relationship in order to create authentic power and assist each other in creating authentic power. He calls this relationship spiritual partnership and defines it as partnership between equals for the purpose of spiritual growth. According to Zukav, spiritual growth now requires relationships of substance and depth, and only spiritual partnerships are able to support all multisensory individuals, not only couples, in creating authentic power. Zukav posits the universal human as the ultimate potential of the emerging multisensory humanity, a human who is beyond nation, religion, race, sex, and economic status, a citizen of the universe whose allegiance is to life first and all else second. So I contacted Gary for this interview because back in the early 90s, I read The Seed of the Soul, and by that time, I was studying in Berkeley at the Acupressure Institute and some other places as well. And when I read that book, it really resonated with me. I understood it totally, and it resonated. It was um, clearly explained, and it all made sense. So time has gone by so long, it's in the early 90s. So it's over 30 years. And so many other books that have come along the way. And now with the good part of technology, I was able to contact him and ask him for the interview. Now, I will offer you what I was able to record. I'll explain why. In Ecuador, as probably is going to happen in many places on Earth, we are living the consequences of climate change very, very strongly. Rivers are drying, and the dams where there's the reserve of water for the electricity offered to the whole country, they are way low. So we are having energy shortages. Though I have solar energy in my home, I chose to go there because of that reason to record the interview. And I didn't consider the fact that I might have the electricity, but the internet provider, when the whole electricity goes in a sector, dies off as well. So I was able to record over like an hour of the interview, where he shares really interesting stories, personal stories of his process. But it suddenly ends because of this situation. So um, I'm sorry for the cut. That's what I was able to accomplish with the interview. That I hope you enjoy. After all, we were able to speak about some important issues that I already mentioned and are the basis of his philosophy. And well, I hope that it reaches you, helps you, and I invite you to share this interview with anybody who is in this uh, path of inner discovery. and you can leave your comments in our YouTube channel where this is going to be posted. And the whole show with music, you're always going to be able to listen to in Spotify and also in iVoox. At our webpage, which is radioserenidad.com, I will put the link over here in the description of the video. You can access not only this interview, but all other interviews I've done in English, not only to important authors about this awakening process, but also musicians for the New Age movement and amazing musicians. Because this is a bilingual program and a bilingual radio station, and so there's a lot in Spanish, a lot in English. That's why I have all these subtitles in Spanish for our speaking Spanish audience. And I invite you to subscribe to our channel and share the information. Leave your comments, leave your questions in our YouTube post. And again, I hope you enjoy what I was able to record of this interview. And that's it. We'll be back after these short messages.
Plenitud, Ciudad de la Alegría, hogar sustituto para adultos mayores. Contáctanos al 099-753-8085. Permasalud Glamping Lodge te espera en la provincia de Imbabura, en Ecuador, para que te conectes con la naturaleza, recuperes energía y bienestar. Te ofrecemos domos full equipados y carpas de glamping con toda comodidad. Escoge entre paquetes básicos de estadía y paquetes completos que incluyen desayuno y acceso al área de nuestra piscina natural con baño turco e hidromasaje. ¿Necesitas un espacio de paz y tranquilidad? Entonces, este es el lugar preciso. Visita nuestra web permasalud.com o envíanos un mensaje de WhatsApp al 0999-203-203.
Estás escuchando New Age, el programa de la nueva era.
So I've already offered you this introduction so you can get to know a little more for those who do not know about Gary. And now he's with us personally. And I would like to start sort of, before we enter the new consciousness ideas, to hear from you, how was your journey after your initial experiences in the Army and the Special Forces that surely impacted your immediate return to the USA? What triggered your interest to focus on a spiritual journey? Welcome.
Well, I wasn't looking for anything like that. I didn't go out looking for a spiritual journey. You might say a spiritual journey found me. I was living in San Francisco, and I got invited to a meeting of physicists at the Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory, which, as you know, is up the hill from the Berkeley campus. And I had never met physicists before. I never liked science. Well, I did like science, but nothing like just elementary classical physics. And so I went, and I was so impressed. This was a group, a Friday afternoon meeting of about 10 to 12 physicists. And they were discussing the question, are we creating the reality that we're experimenting with? And that really fascinated me. Not only the question, but also the fact that I had been discussing that same question with a small group of people that I was meeting in coffee shops with in North Beach in San Francisco. And at the end of that meeting, I was so excited about what I heard. Really excited. I had sparks coming out of my fingertips, like I had 3 cups of cappuccino. But I couldn't explain to anyone why I was excited. So I went to the used bookstores in Berkeley because I couldn't afford new books then, and started to read. And after a while, I began to get a glimpse of some of the things that were exciting me, at least enough to put names to them, like Bohr's complementarity and Heisenberg's um, matrix and Erwin Schrödinger's cat paradox. And I went back to the meeting the next week. I asked if I could come back, and they said I could, which I loved. And so I started reading and reading, and then I decided I'm going to write a book to share what I am learning. And to liberal arts majors like myself, with no interest or background in mathematics or science. And so I started, and it fascinated me. And I, for every chapter, I would make an outline, but then I would almost immediately throw away the outline because the chapter went in more interesting places than the outline did. And after 6 months, I began to realize these chapters, I was writing about a chapter a month, so that meant 6 chapters into the book, I realized the chapters started to fit together, that they'd always fit together. I sort of had a hunch of that, but it crystallized in my mind. They do fit together, but how could they fit together? Because I didn't plan it. And that's when I discovered non-physical reality. I discovered that I wasn't alone in writing this book, that it's not possible to be alone. And so it's not possible to create alone. And it's one of the real ironies of my life that I learned about, that I discovered non-physical reality while I was writing a book about quantum physics. But that's how it happened. And I finished the book. I loved writing it. That's why it's so much fun to read, because it was so much fun to write. And it immediately won, every award it could win. It won the American Book Award for Science. It was reprinted by every English-speaking book club that I know. It was published in mass market edition. Yes.
Yeah, you see that?
Yeah.
There it is. We are giving away this book today to somebody in the audience. It was giving us by the editorial. So we are going to give it away to one of the listeners, the Dancing Woodley Masters. Amazing, amazing. And
well, and then after about several years, non-physical reality became even more real to me. And I wound up writing, I thought my next book would be called something, a sequel to The Dancing Woolly Masters, about another cutting edge branch of science like genetics. But instead, I wound up writing a book about evolution and the soul. And I wondered how this was going to be received, especially since The Dancing Woolly Masters got wonderful reviews in the New York Times. This book went to the people it needed to go to. By then, I had discovered that I could communicate with non-physical teachers. And I had no interest in communicating with non-physical teachers or even what they were. Let me give you a little background because it's fascinating to me. The Dancing Woolly Masters was so well received, and I got an invitation to a conference in Sweden because of that book. But before I could go, I broke up with this young woman that I was in a relationship with. And it was very stressful for me. It was traumatic, and I didn't really know what to do. I knew that I wasn't going to go to Sweden because I couldn't even imagine taking that trip, much less presenting there. And I went to talk with a friend whom I met, an acquaintance who I met at one of his talks. His name's Robert Johnson. He's a Jungian analyst. And he, it sounds like you might have might know him. And so Robert invited me to visit him in San Diego, which I did. And there he said, why don't you go into the desert and become enlightened? That's how it's traditionally done. He said it just like that. He's very laconic and has and not a lot of social skill. So I went into the Anza Borrego Desert in August. It was very hot, east of San Diego. And I stayed there for some time, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I lost track of time. And then I decided that I think I will go to Sweden. I think I'm going to take them up on that offer. And when I got there, I and 3 other co-presenters, one of them was named Edgar Mitchell. He is the founder of the Institute of Noetic Science, and he was an Apollo 14 astronaut. And we got to a little hotel, well, fairly large, but elegant, in the trees, in the forest. There are a lot of forest in Sweden. And the meeting, and the organizer came to meet me, and he said to all of us, welcome, welcome, all of the companies that are here from Sweden, Volvo, Saab, the telecoms, the banks. But we were jet lagged, and we just wanted to sleep. The next day he came back and he said, Gary, well, the surprise he had for us, he took us to a room, and there was a Swedish man, a younger man who turned out to be his son, and a translator. And the elder man closed his eyes and seemed to become someone else. And the someone else he became said that he was a 3,000-year-old Egyptian. And I had no patience for this. I thought it was nonsense. And I just wanted to get to my room and get some sleep. The next morning, the organizer said, you can speak with this man anytime you want. His name is Ambris, not the channel, the one who was channeled. And as shallow as my interaction with him had been, I decided to go because I wanted to see where it would lead. As soon as I got in the room, Ambris asked me this question without introduction. He said, how did you learn to understand your dreams in the desert? Gloria, no one knew I was in the desert. No one. Robert, my friend, who sent me there, knew I was in the desert, but he didn't know what happened there. I went home to visit my folks for 3 days before I went to Sweden. They didn't even know about a desert, but Ambris did, and he knew what I did there. This got my attention permanently. And in the process of talking with Ambris, he said, a flame has been ignited in you, but it's a little flame, like a candle in a cathedral, and you have to feed the flame. And I said, well, how can I feed the flame? And he said, well, first of all, I was alarmed. I said, can it go out? And he said, yes, you could fall. And to feed the flame, you need to speak to people. And I said, that's what I can't do. And then he leaned forward and he extended his hands to me like this and took one of my hands in each of his, and he said, will you speak to people? You must do more than speak to people. You must want to speak to people. And I didn't know if I wanted to do that or if I could. But at last I said, yes, I will. And he squeezed my hand. And I was surprised at how strong this man was. And I went outside the door, and there was a group of people talking in the hall right outside the door. So immediately my intention had given me the opportunity to put it into practice. And I said, hi. And that's how I began to speak to people again. I spoke with Ambris one more time in Sweden, and I asked him, I said, Ambris, why must you speak to me through a translator? And then when I speak to you, it has to go through a translator again. Can't you just speak to me in English directly? And he said, yes, I could, but could you hear me? And I knew the answer right away. I said, no, I knew I couldn't. Then I went home. Fast forward this. I have met another woman that I liked being with. And she said playfully one day, I'm channeling an entity. Would you like to speak with it. And now I was ready. I said, yes. My experience with Ambrose was transformational for me. And I wanted to hear what this other channel had to say. This other channel became a mentor over the next 40 years for me. And everything that I've written since then in a book called The Seat of the Soul and other books that have been written since come from the universe. They come from this channel. Now, that doesn't mean I sit in front of a keyboard and I close my eyes and a book comes out. It's not like that at all. I had to work a lot. I had to put everything that I am into it. I must have been a scribe in other lifetimes because I love language. I love words. I love to clothe concept and energy in words. And I have found this mentorship has led me places that I never would have guessed. And so at the beginning of every talk that I give, or my spiritual partner, Linda Francis, and I give, or event or book, we always say, I don't ask that you accept anything that I say is so simply because I say it. Instead, experiment with it if you resonate with anything in it. And if you resonate and it produces, and you experiment and it produces something that you like, that it feels good in your life, experiment some more. That's one of the things you have a life for. And if you don't resonate with anything, let it go. Don't try to wear a shoe that pinches. So what I've learned is that there is an unprecedented transformation in human consciousness that is happening now. It began in the late 1980s, and it will be complete within a few human generations. An entirely new human consciousness coming to the entire species within that short period of time. Now, Gloria, to remind you and our readers, our listeners, that the old consciousness evolved over 300,000 years, 300 millennia. And this is a new consciousness that's appearing within a few human generations. That is faster than an eye blink, faster than a heartbeat in evolutionary time, which is now being transformed. The old consciousness that we had was limited to the five senses. And if the five senses could not detect anything, then whatever it was that was under discussion simply did not exist. It was considered fantasy or illusion or delusion or hallucination. And the understanding of power of this old consciousness is the ability to manipulate and control. The new consciousness is not limited to the five senses. And so it opens up entirely new vistas. For example, the new consciousness, we call it multisensory consciousness because the five senses together form a single sensory system. And its object of detection is physical reality. Now we have another sensory system. We are multisensory. So what would that look like? If you ever have the hunch that you're more than a body and a mind, that's a multisensory perception. You are. You have an immortal aspect, a part of you that existed before you were born and that will exist after you die. If you've ever had the hunch that the world around you is more than random, that there's meaning in it, that there's meaning that you can learn about yourself from it, and you can. That's a multisensory perception. If you find yourself knowing things about other people that your five senses couldn't provide you, that's a multisensory perception, and we are all becoming multisensory. Now, hundreds of millions of us are becoming multisensory, and it's leading us in ways that I could not have foreseen. The new understanding of the new multi-sensory perception, the new consciousness, comes with a new potential of power. It is the ability to align yourself, your personality, with your soul. This is not a gift like multi-sensory perception. Everyone is receiving multi-sensory perception. It's emerging within us. But creating authentic power has to be accomplished. It has to be willed. It has to be done. And everything that Linda and I share and have given events about and written books about is about creating real power, aligning your personality with your soul. Now, I've said a lot in just a few minutes. Are there any questions you'd like to ask me about what
I got so many questions. First of all, tapping into this new consciousness, into what's happening in the world, we are clearly undergoing a profound changes as humanity, as a planet, the solar system in general, the cosmic changes. But most humans have adapted to a very dysfunctional society all over the world. We feel that that's how things are. I mean, how we have created that reality, we feel that's how things are, and it has become a habit. We are in the middle of this transition that sometimes feels that we're not going to make it because you see the wars, the chaos, the so many problems. I live in a country where problems is what we have every single minute of the day. So it's like a feeling that you could be in a place where it doesn't feel like that, but all over the world, chaos
So is this a question? Is this a
yes,
question you're asking?
yes. I'm going to ask you the question. So uh, not only because changing a mindset is not easy, but because of the inevitable climate changes that might be signaling to the coming of a possible new age, a new ice age. So we have lost in general this connection to spirit, and still a vast majority of people could care less about spiritual awakening. So what can we do as individuals to make the best of this transition, of all the energy that's falling upon us?
What I learned is different from almost everything you've said.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not disagreeing with you that in Quito and in many countries, there is collapse, there is pain, there are problems, many, many countries. But what I learned is we are not the product of our culture. We are not the product of our parents. We're not the product of our peers. We are not the product of what we have been taught. The things that we come into this life with, many of them have their origin before we were born. Every personality in the Earth School, call it an Earth School, pardon me, that would be the domain of time and space and matter and duality that we live in, and fear. Many of the things that we experience are things that were formed in us. Let me put it this way. Every personality has different parts. Some of them originate in fear, and some of them originate in love. The parts that originate in fear are not just fear and trembling, fight or flight. Fear has so many faces. For example, anger, resentment, jealousy, competition, inferiority and needing to please, superiority and feeling entitled. And these parts of our personality that originate in fear have things in common. Number one, they all hurt physically when we experience them. And number two, they all create painful consequences for us when we act on them. We also have parts of our personality that originate in love. And these are the parts that we experience as gratitude, appreciation, caring, contentment, patience, all of the universe. And it's not possible to be on the Earth School and not have a personality. And every personality has frightened and loving parts. The Earth School has a curriculum. The curriculum is authentic power, aligning your personality with your soul. Authentic power is love. There's no greater power. There's no other power. There is nothing else. So when you say, what can we do to make the most of this? This is where I love talking about it. First of all, you can realize that your new perception is real. It's not your fantasy. Secondly, you can develop emotional awareness. Emotional awareness means to understand and experience what you are experiencing emotionally in terms of physical sensations in your body. In your throat area, for example, your chest area, or your solar plexus area. When you are experiencing a frightened part of your personality, when you're in fear, and you look inside, you'll see physical sensations. And I don't mean good feeling, bad feeling. I mean physical sensations like a aching, throbbing, burning, churning, contracting, stinging, stabbing. These are all physical sensations, like if you hit your thumb with a hammer when you're aiming for a nail. That hurts. That hurts. Oh, that hurts. That's a physical sensation. That's what emotions feel like. Emotional experiences are physical experiences. And you learn this, to experience this, as you develop emotional awareness. Your body will not lie to you. If you look in these areas of your body, say throat, chest, and solar plexus, if there's pain there, fear is active in you. And the opposite is true. If you're in a loving part of your personality, the physical sensations feel good, the kind of sensations you want more of. And when you act on them, they create positive, constructive, healthy consequences for you. In the Earth School, this is a realm of choice. And I learned that we are powerful and creative, compassionate spirits. Choice is our essence. Choice is who we are. And we are always brought to experiences that demand a choice continually. That is the Earth School. The fundamental duality in the Earth School is love and fear. The opposite of love is not hate, it's fear. And every choice that we must make is one of love or fear. These are intentions. An intention is a quality of consciousness. It's not a goal, a physical goal. Like you say, I'm going to have a radio show. I'm going to visit Paris. I'm going to have a partner. I'm going to move to another city. These are not intentions. These are more like out-tensions. They're things you can accomplish and intend to accomplish. But an intention is a quality of consciousness. And when you act from love, you infuse your deeds and your words with that quality of consciousness. And when you act or speak from fear, you infuse your words and your deeds with that quality of consciousness. And you create very different consequences for yourself. In other words, this is the development of the creation of authentic power. First, emotional awareness. You feel a physical sensation. An emotional experience has a physical sensation, say jealousy. Oh, that's so painful. Then you use your volition, your willpower, to move you, to move your attention to a loving part of your personality, a part that is loving or loved, and you know it. A time in your life that you were with someone and you were loved or loving, and you felt that. And while you're doing that, you decide to act from the loving part of your personality or speak from the loving part of your personality instead of from the frightened part of your personality while you're feeling the painful physical sensations and judgmental thoughts of the frightened part. That's the creation of authentic power, real power. And
Now,
that is to be accomplished.
I understand exactly what you're saying, and I can relate to it. Yet thinking about the general public that are just living the daily life as they have been taught, the general idea of love is not exactly as you mentioned, but rather this kind of possessive kind of love. That's what we relate with at the beginning. That's how we're taught. I love you, you belong to me. Obviously, the more you are into this idea of what you're sharing, the less attachment there is because there is a consciousness that goes beyond duality. So we normally relate to love in a
See,
different way.
could I ask you to experiment with something? When you
Sure,
say we normally, or we think, or we were taught, can
I
you
could
make
say
that
I. Yeah,
aha?
sure.
Yes, make it an
I
I
know.
statement.
I know what you mean, but I also represent the we, not just the
No,
I.
but you cannot
So,
represent the we. This is what I've been taught.
mhm,
Love is not an idea. It is a state of being.
exactly.
And it's not your responsibility or my responsibility to change anyone else or what they think or what they were taught. But
That's
to,
true.
if they are interested, I can provide them, Linda can provide them, and maybe others can, well, many others can provide them
Mhm,
tools that they can use to develop, to move beyond fear and
mhm.
into love. Creating authentic power is such a tool. That
It
is what
is.
enables you to do.
So, in this way, to create authentic power,
See,
the tool of discernment, I would believe, is one of the most powerful tools that we can develop discernment. Because we can hear the voice of our ego that wants to take us in one way, or the voice of our soul that is a deeper voice that aligns us more with a deeper purpose. So, how can we develop, or how can we get in contact if, I'm just within me and I'm listening to my voices, you know, how can I know which voice is a truer voice than the other?
that's a choice you have to make. I asked my teacher once, I've got two of them, and he said something that was different than I'd ever heard anything him say before. I don't know if it's a he, it's an impersonal energy dynamic. And I said, how do I know whether I can believe that? I could hardly believe what I was saying that to my teacher. But that's what came to me, so I said it, and he said, that's a choice you must make. And I say that now to you and to the people who are listening.
Mhm.
Everything that you do requires a choice of love or a choice of fear. In other words, you can choose to learn wisdom through love and trust or through fear and doubt. Creating authentic power allows you to transform those painful, destructive dynamics in you that perpetuate themselves unconsciously and replace them with the conscious perpetuation of dynamics in you that create constructive consequences. In other words, you're developing mastery in your life. Now, when I was writing the Dancing Wuli Masters, put it this way, it was the first time I was writing. I remember I would go around. I had this vision of myself as a writer, and I would think, uh, a writer is someone like Ernest Hemingway, maybe, or oh, pardon me, I'm just getting something out of the way so I can see your picture again. There you are. Well, the short of it is I taught myself how to write. I went to a used bookstore in San Francisco, a thrift store, not a used bookstore, and I got a set of volumes called Famous Writers Course, Nonfiction, and I gave it to myself. And I fulfilled my vision of a writer. I was sitting at a desk with a typewriter in front of me and a lamp and an ashtray full of cigarette butts. And I sat down and I taught myself how to write. Really, I had done a good job of it. I had some help along the way too. I went to high school in a little town in the Midwest and then got a scholarship to one of the best universities in the world, Harvard. And I can't say they taught me a lot, but I learned a lot just by being there. I learned about academic excellence in the mind. I didn't learn about the heart. I didn't learn about caring or connection or compassion. But I brought all of that together. And I sat down to write, and nothing happened. I had the desk. It was overlooking the San Francisco Bay. I had a Smith Corona electric portable. I had all of these things, and nothing happened. And that's when I realized the first thing I needed to know about writing. I had to have something to say. And I didn't have anything to say. So all of that I let go of. Now, when I was invited to this group of physicists at the Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory, and I was so excited, I had something to say. Now, where this is leading me was to the experience of non-physical reality, to non-physical teachers who were trance mediums, I think they're called that. They close their eyes, they don't remember what they say, and they say wise things, and they don't attribute it to themselves. That's not what I've ever done or know how to do. I speak with a wise mentor,
Mhm.
and I bless that. I have that blessing in my life every day. And what I have been taught is that this new consciousness that is emerging takes us beyond the limitations of the five senses into not into non-physical reality. People think, or I thought, when I experience non-physical reality, I'm going to be relieved of all my suffering. It's going to be magical. It'll be something completely ineffable, can't be described. No, that's not my experience at the moment. However, my teacher says, when you die, you will experience non-physical reality in ways that you cannot in the earth school. But I'm still in the earth school. I still have a zip code. I still have a computer that doesn't work sometimes. And but within the earth school, I know how to create authentic power. It's so simple. It's so simple, Gloria. Develop emotional awareness.
Mhm.
Practice responsible choice, which is making choices for which you're willing to assume responsibility. Consult intuition. Intuition is the voice of the non-physical world. And then it's for you. So what I'm suggesting is, no, you are not confined. What is the, there's a cliche that your origin's not cultural, it's not familial. Your origin is the universe. You are moving toward, not toward
That's
the
of
universe
source.
because it's not separate from you. What I have discovered are things that I cannot explain. And after a period of great difficulty, have given up trying to explain them because they cannot be explained. Your intellect is designed to work with your five senses. It takes data from the five senses and compares, analyzes, concludes, and deduces those observations that it feels, that it concludes are most helpful to its personality in creating external power, the ability to manipulate and to control. We are now experiencing a higher order logic and understanding of the heart. And even beyond that, Gloria, we are moving toward a consciousness that is beyond human. And that's not mystical, it's not esoteric. It's simply a path that we're on. We're on it as a species. And we're at the very beginnings of that right now. We stand with one foot in one world and one foot in the other. One foot with an old consciousness that's dead. It's more than dying, it's dead. But it's everywhere in the world around us. The world that we're in was created by the old consciousness. People who are as old as we are. And I'm not saying that you're old. I'm saying that my body is old. But I'm not saying that I'm old. I'm not. I'm ancient. I'm timeless. And so are you. But as this body that can't ski, it doesn't have the balance, endurance, stamina, strength and that it had, has a perception, not has a perception, is a perception beyond anything that it could have ever imagined. This is where our new consciousness is taking us. And we need to be patient. But you ask, how can we use this? How can we use it for what? How can we use it to become more loving is the only significant question. If it's how can we use it to help this new consciousness come into being, we can't. That's not something we can do. But I have discovered things that I, as a graduate of Harvard, as the author of a book that won the American Book Award for Science about physics, never dreamed of. I am my perceptions, and I will suggest that to your listeners. You are your perceptions. Now, I understand you're in Quito, or maybe you go to Lima, or maybe Sao Paulo, or maybe Tokyo, or maybe just an Indian reservation in the United States, and there's nothing but poverty. Not nothing. There is always goodness everywhere. Goodness runs deep. But there is an abundance of poverty, alcoholism. All of these places you could say, just as you do about your home, your hometown. Yeah, but you don't know what it's like here. It doesn't matter. There's not enough food. There's violence is out of control. The political system is completely corrupt. Now what? I mean, you're talking about a new consciousness. Yes, I am. And that new consciousness is emerging in you. And that's why I said at the beginning of our talk to any of our listeners, if I say anything that you resonate with, experiment with it. And if you like what it creates, experiment some more. In order to experience love, I have to, but I'll generalize because this is the dynamic, stripped of all psychology, philosophy, theology. If you want to make changes in yourself, you've got to have the intention to do it. And you've got to know what it is in yourself you want to change. And if you don't, you're not going to change. And in this process of change, of creating or not creating authentic power, there's no judgment from the universe. I don't get rewarded if I do, and I don't get punished if I don't. I simply create different consequences for myself. It's that simple. The actual doing of it is where the work comes in.
Yeah. So I have a couple of questions about the alignment of the personality with the soul, but I would like to ask you after we go to a brief pause, and we'll be back with these questions and something about the veil between the spirit and matter. That also I'd like to share some experiences with you to see if by any chance they have happened to you as well, which is, I'm certain they have. But let's take a little break and we'll be back.
Plenitud, Ciudad de la Alegría, hogar sustituto para adultos mayores. Contáctanos al 099-753-8085. Permasalud Glamping Lodge te espera en la provincia de Imbabura, en Ecuador, para que te conectes con la naturaleza, recuperes energía y bienestar. Te ofrecemos domos full equipados y carpas de glamping con toda comodidad. Escoge entre paquetes básicos de estadía y paquetes completos que incluyen desayuno y acceso al área de nuestra piscina natural con baño turco e hidromasaje. ¿Necesitas un espacio de paz y tranquilidad? Entonces, este es el lugar preciso. Visita nuestra web permasalud.com o envíanos un mensaje de WhatsApp al 0999-203-203.
Permítenos acompañarte con New Age.
Okay, we're back with Gary. And Gary, I'd like to share something that has happened to me lately, and which is made me become a little more like aware of what I think, what I feel, and everything. Because I was in Denver a couple of weeks ago that I went to a glamping fair, and as I was driving this rental car for the first time in my life when I have a rental car, it crossed my mind a flat tire, and I go, why would it cross my mind a flat tire? I drove and I came back, and then I went to a restaurant, and as I went out of the restaurant, I got a flat tire, and I go, oh yes, oh yes. And today something very unusual happened. Okay, so I ordered something. I ordered to a restaurant a food for my lunch, but my colleague wanted me to order like chicken wings, and I said no, no, no. He had just a wishful thinking about chicken wings, and I ordered my sandwich, and you know that was it. When I got the order, somehow, without me paying for it or anything, there were chicken wings in the order, and I was not charged for it. And so I talked to the people that sent me, and I said, what happened? I didn't order that. And I said, I don't know what happened, but there was an error in the system when you order. Obviously, you just pay for your sandwich, but you got the chicken wings as well. So I called my colleague and I said, okay, you got to be careful for what you wish. Come on and see what we got. And they were the chicken wings. So what I've been noticing through time is that veil between what what we think and what we manifest is getting thinner and thinner. So we gotta be even more careful now what we think than decades ago when the energy was starting to move. What's your sense about this I don't know if call it the veil that separates matter from spirit? It's thinning a little more. Do you have that sense of something going on around this?
Yes, yes, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And an entirely new consciousness in a very short period of time emerging in the entire human species. That's 7 or 7.5 billion people. I wouldn't say there's a veil, because a veil gives the idea that there's something here and there's something there. And there's something between here and there, and we're calling it a veil. There's no difference between here and there. There is. This new perception, this new experience happens in ways that are appropriate to our understanding. What you saw in these two experiences, in the old consciousness, that would have been called synchronicity, a term coined by Carl Jung, a Swiss psychologist in the 1890s. It means an unexplainable, meaningful coincidence. You can't deny it, but you can't explain it. Our new consciousness is that all the time. It's not as though this is a remarkable exception. Look, chicken wings and I didn't order them. Everything is a miracle all the time. That's not something that we can create. That is, you might say. But what we can do is change our awareness, expand our awareness. And as our awareness begins to change, we change. Do you remember I said at the beginning of our talk, I suggest that no one take anything that I'm saying as so. However, I'm not saying that it's so for you. I'm saying that it's so for me. This is my experience. When I first started talking with my teacher, and he told me things, and I said, I can't tell other people about that. I don't want to participate in anything that could create another dogma, another cult, another religion. We don't need the ones we have. They're not the core of them, but the practice of them, the institution of them is toxic in every case. He said you don't need to. Simply suggest that what you're sharing is a window through which you've come to see life and offer that. And perhaps others will see value in that without attachment on your part. And that's what I say. I say, in my experience, you are your perceptions. They're not happening to you. You're not experiencing them. You are them.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
We have become accustomed to looking at things in terms of things or parts and relationships between them. There never have been such things, and there never will be. Here's another way of looking at that. In the old consciousness, there is a barrier that is uncrossable between in here and out there. That barrier is not a part of the new consciousness. In here and out there is a distinction that exists only in the Earth School.
Mm-hmm.
That means if you want to change the world, you have to change yourself.
Yes.
The world is not your mirror. It's much more than that. When you say the world reflects me, or it reflects the universe back to me, or something like that, you're saying there's a difference between what is reflected and the reflection. That difference does not exist. Those two are not two, they are one.
So it's a consciousness beyond duality.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Duality is the old consciousness, but it's the consciousness we live in. And you asked me earlier, so what good is all of this to somebody who's living here and got real problems in a real world? It's precious. It's like finding a treasure beyond words, because you are finding a way that you can, through the application of your own intention and volition and emotional awareness, transform your life from one who looks at the world. Let me put it this another way. How you experience something depends on how you hold it. Something can happen in the world, and a frightened part of your personality will look at it. Maybe the death of a child, an agonizing death by cancer, the collapse of a business, the dissolution of a relationship. And a frightened part of your personality will look at it as the most painful, horrible of all possibilities coming into my life now. A loving part of your personality will look at the same circumstance and see in it a gift from the gracious universe, an opportunity to grow spiritually. You have that ability. That's why I said earlier that you are a powerful and creative, compassionate and loving spirit. And the pain in your life is a measure of the distance between that reality and your self-image.
It would be the barrier, right? I mean,
that is, well, when I spoke of barrier before, I talked about the barrier between inside and outside. That doesn't exist. And there's no way that I'm going to be able to convince you of that. I ask.
No, you don't need to convince me. I am completely aware of that.
No, you, Gloria, are do not need convincing of these things. But what I'm saying is there's no way that I can convince somebody who is five sensory.
Yeah.
But I suspect that anyone who is listening to your radio shows or your podcast is not five sensory. And they're looking for more. If they older, like I was saying earlier, old enough to have been born with the old consciousness like I was, I have something to contrast that with, the new consciousness. But millennials and Gen Z don't. They are among the first generations to be born with a new consciousness. For them, the new consciousness is simply human consciousness. But they are aware of a change happening in the world, a big one. And they can see it. They can see the world dissolving around them. They can see our social structures collapsing. They can see that nothing that used to be able to help them works anymore. In fact, it makes things worse. And they want to know, why is this happening? They don't understand that this world that they have inherited was built by 5 sensory humans pursuing external power, the ability to manipulate and to control. And external power is now toxic. It used to be our good medicine. We used to need it to survive. But we're no longer a 5 sensory species that evolves by surviving and survives by pursuing external power, manipulating and controlling. We are a multi-sensory species and rapidly becoming so, that evolves by growing spiritually and grows spiritually by creating authentic power.
Mm.
And in
Now,
that process,
go
please.
ahead. Okay, my question regarding what you've mentioned, that the inner and the outer is one. Yet you've mentioned the need to connect the personality, align the personality with the soul. In this case, the alignment, the need for alignment of the two parts of our experience here would mean that there is a difference between one and the other that we need to align.
That's the illusion. The illusion
Yes.
is that there's a difference. The illusion is that you are different from me. The illusion is that there are others. The illusion is the entire realm of fear is a realm of illusion. It's not real. Only love is real.
Exactly. But how do we get to the experience? Because we can know that theoretically from the books we read, the teachers we listen to, but we don't have the experience in ourselves integrated enough to really know for certain that that is true.
Well, in that case, how serious are you about really knowing it and not integrating it, not learning it, but becoming it? If you are, then create authentic power. And most people to create authentic power are not incentivized by the fact that they want to know what non-physical reality is like or what love is like. Pain is their incentive. Their life has become so painful and they don't know what to do about it. And at last, they turn to the ultimate alternative. They look for a spiritual path. But you don't have to wait that long. You don't have to wait until pain brings you to your knees and you say, there's got to be more to my life than this. You can begin to explore. If you resonate with someone like me or like, wisdom comes in so many ways. Our lives are so complex and rich and deep and powerful. Pay attention to what's happening to you. Ask yourself questions that are helpful to you. For example, you see something, you say, how can I see? Ask yourself, how can I see this without judgment? You see someone abusing someone else, either physically, sexually, emotionally, financially. If you decide to interfere and you judge one or the other, you create painful karma for yourself. The universe is a universe. The Earth School is a domain of justice, but non-judgmental justice. That's called karma in the East.
Mm-hmm.
It's appropriate that you step between the abuser and the abused. This is what Gandhi did often. He would step between someone who was beating someone else. His knowledge was, beat me. You'll spend your energy on me, but this person will not be harmed. That's love. We talked about love earlier. It's not
Mhm.
sentimental. Love does not hurt. Need hurts. Need is excruciating. So if you really want to explore these things, don't worry about being esoteric, philosophical. Don't worry about anything. Be aware. Become aware of what you're experiencing inside, not what other people are experiencing. And the more you're experiencing inside, the more you'll find yourself understanding people, because you know through your experience how painful a frightened part of your personality is. We mentioned
Yeah.
jealousy, but what about betrayal? What about rage? What about hopelessness, despair?
Mhm.
When you see somebody that's not acting from love, they're acting from fear. You know that. And you also know how much pain they're in. You know they're hurting because you know how much you hurt when you act from fear. And this is the origin of passion. Your heart begins to melt
Mhm.
because you understand.
Now, this new consciousness that you are mentioning, which it goes beyond duality, in what way is related to the experience of the enlightened ones? I mean, they're Buddha or so
I don't
many.
know. I don't know.
Mhm.
I know the answer to that now. I don't know what it is to be enlightened. I
Mhm.
don't know what enlightened ones experience, but I know what I experience. And I know now that in my 20s and for most of my life, I was very insecure. I was so frightened that I didn't know I was frightened. The street name for that in English is macho. I was so macho that I didn't realize that I became a Green Beret. I became an infantry officer. I became a paratrooper. And if someone had said, "You're doing this because you're frightened, Gary," I wouldn't have believed it. I've gotten in an argument, in a fight with him.
Mhm.
But I didn't realize how frightened I was of not living up to my expectations of myself, and even more to what I thought were the expectations of others for me.
Mhm.
And without awareness, I acted on these things, these frightened parts, and they created painful consequences for me. And when they came, I reacted to them. And when they came, I reacted to them. And that's what the Buddhists call the wheel of suffering or
Mhm.
samsara. It can go all week, it can go all month, it can go all life, it can go for lifetimes, it can go for hundreds of lifetimes until you inject consciousness at the point of choice. And that's what our new consciousness allows us to do, to
But
create authentic power.
now, conscious choices. About conscious choices, I mean, if there is this energy, which we can call the soul, and sometimes acts through us or with us or on us in
No,
ways that we are not aware.
that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
Mhm.
the opposite. You are not a victim of your soul or anything else. Your soul is what you are. You are an incarnation of a part of your soul, but your soul is not acting through you. You
Mhm.
have free will, and it's free and it's real free will.
Okay,
You must make your choices, and as you do, you yourself will experience the consequences of your choice until at last you begin to connect the dots between the choices you're making and the
uh,
experiences that you're encountering.
yeah. So let me explain what I'm trying to get, and I'll give you an example of what I experienced. Okay, so I had the idea of unconditional love based on what I was taught. Oh, unconditional love, the love that parents have for your children, and that. All those ideas that were implanted or given through conditioning. And one day, I had an experience that showed me what unconditional love was, what had nothing to do with what I was taught. And in that experience of unconditional love that I had, I first of all realized that all my life I had lived in fear. And when I had the experience, which went beyond duality, as you we've mentioned, it went totally beyond duality because it was an experience of oneness, where there was no fear whatsoever, where love, freedom,
Or your
and
frozen, Gloria.
peaceful.
Your video is frozen for me.
Oh, yeah, your video was frozen for me too, but I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, so that was how far we were able to reach before we got the energy shortage and the internet was gone. So I would like to sort of wrap up the idea that I was um, sharing regarding the experiences of the soul and the level of consciousness where we are in a day by day. So I actually had that experience of unconditional love that I was mentioning through a very lucid dream. It was amazing. So lucid that I can remember every detail of it right now, and I don't remember what I did yesterday. That's how important dreams can be, and especially what they bring in the senses, in the feelings that we can get. So my experience was that of oneness, and that in that experience of oneness, there exists no fear because there is no division. There is no division. We are one, and in that oneness brings a sense of fulfillment, of peace, and love was the same as inner peace, liberty, or freedom, and love. It was one energy. Now, if I didn't had that experience, I possibly could not have reached that understanding of unconditional love. Why I had the experience, it's also a mystery to me. I mean, I've been working on myself. I was going through a twin flame experience, and it just happened. I had the Kundalini rising, awakening, and it brought a lot of awareness, a lot of deep, profound consciousness about many, many things, about life, about the spiritual realm. So if I didn't have that, I didn't have also the understanding of those dimensions. So we could work on ourselves to become aware of our feelings, of our emotions, of being just aware of what's going on in us. Yet I do believe that somehow in the process, whether it comes through the soul, the soul level consciousness of ourselves, or whatever experience, we need to connect to those experiences or those level of experiences in order to understand that they exist, in order to understand that a new consciousness needs to be embedded in the collective so that we can create a new reality, collective reality. Yes, the process is individual. It depends on your soul contracts, if we can call them. It depends on what you do with your life, the choices you make. Yet the choices can be made from your ego desires or your soul connection. They take you to different places. Yes, we are all one, but we have what I have always said is like from the spirit realm to the material realm is like a light. You turn on the light and you start to dimmerize in the and the light at the spirit level is totally on, 100% on. And as we go to the material realm, the dimmer starts going down and down and down until we are in the material world where we are separated physically, disconnected in this age, disconnected from our conscious awareness of soul or spirit. And then I'm sure that, in the ages that have been mentioned by the Greeks and the Hindus about the Satya Yuga or the Golden Age, there was a lot more conscious connection to the divine energy, as we call it, the spiritual levels. But that's not the truth as of now. We are learning to become aware of those connections and to allow them to flow through us in a more conscious way. Therefore, the choices that we make regarding one level of awareness or the other will take us in one way or another direction. I believe that you choose your path. Nobody can walk your path for you. What we do by sharing these interviews and different kinds of thinking beliefs is just to share possibilities that you can connect with them, but unless you walk your path, unless you become aware of the process that you are creating, the awakening to spiritual realms, who knows how it will happen. I do believe that we need to do our work. When I interviewed a Tibetan Buddhist monk a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about some things, some topics, and he said, okay, so if you want to build muscle, you're not just going to sit there and believe that your muscles are going to get stronger if you don't work at them. Well, the same thing is in regards to your inner connection, in regards to your spiritual awareness or awakening. It comes through some sort of investment of your energy, of your focus in your life. And, we are one thing with everything, and the energy that's coming and penetrating to stimulate this awakening, it's big at this time because we are on a transition of era. We are moving to a new age of consciousness. And therefore, that energy is coming and supporting us, but we need to do the work. Is that I have the weights next to me, which is the energy, is there. But if I don't lift them and I start doing the work, nothing's going to happen. The same thing is with everything. We need to focus our attention, our energy in what we need to do for ourselves. The path is going to be personal, individual, different for each other because you are going to go through a process that will take you in a different possible path from how I'm walking mine. But the higher the spiritual awareness, the closer to one path it becomes. Oneness, one path. So, this is what I can share to finish the program today. I hope this is helpful, and I hope you really invest your energy in yourself. You are the architect of your life. You are the designer of your life. So you choose which way you want to take your life and how far you want to get with it in your design. Okay, thank you for listening and sharing this interview. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can follow us in our Spotify or iBox, which is where we upload the podcasts. And listen to our radio station. It's an online radio that reaches all over the world. We mainly put New Age music, jazz, Celtic music, world music. And on Fridays and Saturdays, we have pop music, and Latin music, and a little bit of easy listening rock. Okay, so this is about our radio, and hope you have a great day, and this has been helpful to you somehow. Until the next show. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Con el auspicio de Plenitud, Ciudad de la Alegría, Serenidad Spa Terapéutico, Permasalud Glamping, Marathon Sports.